Hey everyone, welcome to Group Dentistry Now's DSO Study Club. I am going to be your host for the next hour, Bill Newman. Thanks for joining us. We will make sure we keep this to an hour. We will not go over that. This is a live webinar. We would appreciate any questions that you can place those in the chat area, and we will answer those. We also had a ton of questions that came in ahead of time, and we will address quite a few of those as well. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to file in, and then we'll get things started, maybe another minute or so, get things started. This will be recorded. This is being recorded, and we will have the recording up on our website by the end of the day, but we hope you stay for the entire live event so you can ask some questions. We are talking about how Archway Dental has scaled with the use of technology. We have Adam Richichi with us, who is the CEO of Archway, and Joe Eckerle, who is the COO. So I'll give everybody maybe another 30 seconds to file in, and then I will ask our first poll question. Get a feel for who's on the webinar, and then we will get into the Q&A. All right, give people another couple of seconds to come in, and then we'll get this first poll question going. All right, we might have a couple more people coming in, but we're going to get things started so we get into it. Again, thank you, Adam and Joe, for joining us. I'm going to stop the screen share for a second so you can see everybody. There we are. How you guys doing today?
Good, doing well.
Great.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Adam. Thanks for joining us. The first question we're going to ask is the number of practices you have. So I will get this out, and if you wouldn't mind just answering this for us quickly. Number of locations you have. Don't be shy. We're trying to get an idea for how big or small your group is. And the thing that always drives me crazy about this question, which is the question that everybody asks, is we don't necessarily know how big each individual practice is, right?
Mm.
So you have some people that have 20 ops in a location. That's pretty big. So this doesn't measure that. Let's get a couple of more here. Anybody else want to answer this? Maybe one or two more people. All right. All right.
So much of the complexity of running a DSO is knowing how many providers you have. I mean, locations is one vector, and how many providers is definitely another, because like you said, you could have large office, small office, different demands.
Maybe that's the way we'll ask this question next time. I like that. All right, let's see what we have here. Let's share the results. And we've got about half the audience is 1 to 3. We've got somebody that has 4 to 10. And then we've got one that has 21 plus locations. All right, we've got a couple more that we'll be asking throughout this webinar. Why don't we start things off? Adam, maybe a little introduction, a little bit about your background and a little bit about Archway, and then Joe, you can introduce yourself.
Sure. So Archway Dental Partners, we are a multi-specialty, partnership-driven DSO here in the Northeast. Really high-quality, technology-focused, both clinically and otherwise, but a 54-year-old practice who's been doing it right, obviously, for quite a long time. Personally, I've been in dentistry for 23 years now, always on the administrative side, and always enjoyed dentistry. Dentistry's got a lot of interesting ups and downs. But I think a really interesting point that we're talking here today, man, technology, we were dying for technological innovation 15 years ago. It's nice that we're seeing it all now, get to enjoy some of it now. So I'm a big fan of dental technology today.
Thanks, Adam. Joe?
Yeah. Hey, my name's Joe Eckerle. I've been with Archway for 2 years now, just celebrated my second year anniversary. Previous to them, I was with a larger DSO. My career has kind of taken a different route. I come from the manufacturing environment for the first 25 years or so of my career, and I've been in dentistry for a total of 7 years now. And I think that's really, it's actually helped me. It's brought in a different perspective as I've come into dentistry and looking at offices and looking at efficiencies and operations and using data to drive decisions. When I was in operations, we always talked about lean manufacturing and Six Sigma and some things that I brought with me into my recent careers here, cutting waste and different things that I was taught in the manufacturing side of things that we're using now. So love technology as well. I love technology, even though you can't see the pictures behind me. They're all antique cars that I have at my house. So I like old stuff too, but in dentistry, I like high tech and data. So that's me in a nutshell.
Very, very cool. One thing that I wanted to mention about Archway is that Archway was actually a 2023 Emerging Groups to Watch award winner, which was great. We had the opportunity to present that award a while back, and also have had the pleasure of being the moderator for a CEO panel discussion that Adam was involved in. And also, you're involved in the DSO debate, right? Private equity versus privately funded or doctor-owned, doctor-led, I think is how we did it at the Yankee meeting. So a couple of panel discussions we've had you on.
Yeah, they're all great, and thank you for always including us.
Yeah, yeah. And Archway was Dental Associates of Connecticut in a prior life.
It was up until January 2023 where we had our name change there, but 50 plus years of Dental Associates of Connecticut.
Yep. And you are now not just in Connecticut.
Correct. New York as well.
Yep. That's great. It might have been one of the reasons for the name change.
That's it.
Well, great. Well, thanks, guys, for the intros. And like I said to the audience, if you have any questions, just kick them out during our conversation, put it in the chat or in the Q&A area, and we'll try and answer those live. So the first question I have here, this one did come in from somebody that registered. So what kinds of insights have you gathered through the use of analytics, and how have you used them to drive performance?
Yeah, I'm going to kick that over to Joe to start with that one, because what he didn't include in his introduction is that we lovingly call Joe KPI Joe. So Joe, gets to start us there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I love KPIs and I love data. When I first got here 2 years ago, we didn't have the analytics or dashboards that we could look at to even measure ourselves. There's a famous saying, "What gets measured gets done," and we're living that right now at Archway. So immediately out of the gate, we brought in Jarvis because we're using Dentrix Ascend here at the organization. Jarvis is a tack-on. It's a Henry Schein product. And I really loved it because you just turn it on and you're using it and you're getting data already that day. So we started building KPIs and measuring KPIs. And one success story that we had with finally looking at the analytics is really focusing on hygiene. Through Jarvis, we could see what procedures hygienists were doing, how many of them that they were doing, how many patients they saw every day, all things that we weren't measuring previously, but we started measuring at the time. And what we could find from that data is start comparing, hey, why is this hygienist doing $1,800 a day and this one's doing $600 a day? We can start comparing the differences between the two. So it's for us getting the data, analyzing the data, and then comparing the two. Then we could say, hey, Miss Hygienist or Mr. Hygienist, you're not taking x-rays when a patient comes in, or you're not doing perio charting. So we really looked at that data, created our standard of care, and make sure every one of our hygienists were following that standard of care. And we continue to monitor it every day now. We've seen since that time over 20% organic growth in our hygiene program, and we're still growing. So we're still fine-tuning some things there. But I think that is one of our biggest success stories, using Jarvis and using the data that we have at our fingertips.
So your KPI, Joe. So what are the KPIs that maybe like the top 4 or 5 that you measure on I don't know, daily, weekly, whatever the cadence is?
Yeah, we measure new patient flow in every office. We measure it, and so we know it, so we can change it or look at it and improve it wherever we can. I think everybody does. They look at their doctor and hygiene productivity. We look at it from a daily production, and we look at it from an hourly production. And again, not as much about the production, but more about the patient care. that equals the production, right? If you're not doing all the things you need to do for patient care, then your production is gonna be low. So that's kind of how we back into how we're treating our patients. But those are really some of the main ones is just monitoring how the doctors and hygienists are performing in the new patients. If you have all that, you're going to be pretty successful. The other thing we really look at is our schedule. And I've always been a schedule guy in the whole time I've been in dentistry, knowing that you need to be booked, over this next week at about 85% to your schedule. If you're only booked at 60% of the schedule when it's Monday, you got a lot of work to do before the end of the week. So we look at that KPI and measure that on a daily basis too, to make sure that we have all of our patients booked for every office.
I'll just add there, while dentistry throws us a lot of curveballs, and you don't want to be neurotic about every single day and every single provider hitting particular goals, it's good to know where you are juxtaposed to your provider, clinic, and macro goals at any given time. Otherwise, without this layer of data, we're really shooting in the dark. We're hoping that we set up the right provider schedules, the right amount of doctors to hygienists to specialty care, using things like Jarvis and Ascend simultaneously. We know very incrementally, are we doing what we thought we were going to do? And even going back to Joe's point about hygiene, which they've done a great job of using this technology and the data to drive changes in hygiene behavior. But for me and for some of the providers in the practice, knowing it's clarity as to what the behaviors are there in the practice, knowing that hygienists or providers are askew to clinical standards that we set, and you can see that in the data. Are we not taking enough x-rays or the correct x-rays, fluoride treatments, oral cancer screenings, all of that? If it seems askew on a provider basis, it tells us that someone is disparate from a clinical standard. As much as it's about numbers and KPIs, it really tells us that something clinically is not happening right. There's a really interesting kind of nexus of both clinical and financial.
Are those analytics shared at the practice level? Do some people at the practice level have access to that so they can make decisions, then and now, versus, and then you've kind of have the overview of the Archway, right? So everybody at the group practice.
Yeah. Bill, not only do we share them at the office level, they freak out if they can't access it in any given morning. So they're addicted to it now, as I am, and they're looking at. They have their own dashboards for every category. They have their morning huddle reports, and it has everything in there that they need. And if it's not there for some reason, which it normally is, but they're asking where's the data. So absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, great. Thanks. That makes sense. I'm going to do another poll question right now. This is the biggest challenge. So we can only choose one of these here. So as I launch this, it looks like I'm a little delayed, but there we go. So what is your biggest challenge when scaling your multi-location practice or your group practice or your DSO? So you can only choose one. Managing operations across locations, hiring and retaining staff, insurance and revenue cycle management, tracking and analyzing business performance, implementing and integrating new technology. So let's get a couple more.
I don't want to skew any answers. I think I have a prediction here.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? Well, I'll wait, and then once I feel like everybody's answered, I want to hear the prediction here. Because I can see it, you can't see it on your side, so I can't guess. I already know. Well, I think I know. All right, let's get like one or two more here, and then we'll call it quits. There is a. I was just gonna say there's a big winner, and then it just shifted. A couple more people added their answers in. Okay, there is definitely a winner, a clear winner here. Which one, Adam, would you think it is?
To say it's insurance and revenue cycle. Joe, what do you think?
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, well, it is not. It's actually something that I'm going to share this in a second, but we'll kind of, no, somebody else just, all right, we had two more people. All right, this is funny. The one that was the clear winner is still a clear winner, but not as much. And actually, you did influence somebody because one more person actually did insurance and revenue cycle management. So that's funny. All right. This one seems to be an ongoing issue since COVID.
Mm.
Does that give you a hint now, maybe what
Yeah,
it
it
might
does.
be?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hiring.
so hiring and retaining staff is a big winner, followed like a tie with three others. So tracking and analyzing business performance was not such a big challenge. So it
Mm.
sounds like there are tools out there, right, that
Yep.
actually people can use to do that now. Now, of course, whether you act on that, right, that's the other thing, right? You've got all this great information out there, but then you have to take it and do something with it.
Mm.
But yeah, that hiring and retaining staff. And I've got a couple of questions at the end related to leveraging technology, hopefully to help out with hiring and retaining staff. But we'll hold that off to the end. I see a couple of questions here. Um, this is a question, actually. Why don't we handle this one? This is for you, Joe. This is this is a buddy of mine. Thanks for asking this, Mike. He's got a DSO out on the West Coast. How did you ensure your offices were using Jarvis daily?
Good question. Really, that's a kind of that's a manual process. My operation manager, Kim, would actually send out particular questions about how the office performed or what their schedule looks like for the next week. And we use chat, a Google function here at the office, which I'm not a big fan of, but Adam loves, so we don't talk about that much. So she'd chat out to all the office managers, hey, please respond here on what your production, what your schedule looks like for the next month or whatever. So they would all chime in. It was basically just by testing people out of the gate. And we did find some people in the very beginning that hadn't even logged into Jarvis for 3 weeks or so. So we can also look into Jarvis and see who's logged into it as well when we first rolled it out. So, just keep the pressure on them, keep asking the questions. And that's also a way to train them on what to look at and why it's important.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you, Mike, for asking that. It's a great question. There's another one here, which, is maybe not a technology focused question, but since we talked a good bit about hygiene and the success you've had with hygiene, says, speaking of hygiene, how do you compensate your hygienists, especially with the challenges of staffing, which this ties into that last poll question?
Right?
Maybe the simple answer there is competitively, right? And do our best. So I think maybe the question might be more specific in methodology. Some pay their hygienists based on percentages of production with or bonus or hourly. We're pretty traditional in the way of an hourly compensation for hygienists, whereby we try and be as competitive as possible. Though it is astute that there are significant labor challenges among hygiene, and the financial aspect is a big part of it, but not the only aspect of it. Obviously, we provide a safe and comfortable workplace for our hygienists. We provide them with the sufficient amount of time to treat a patient properly and do the asks that our clinical team asks of them. So the whole cornucopia makes it a more attractive place for them to hang up their scaler. Yeah.
That's probably a really good topic to kind of focus on a little bit more here. Again, not necessarily technology focused, but the way you indicated that the biggest challenge was not recruitment and retention means that you probably are having you're having some success with that at Archway. Any other, tips and suggestions for the people in the audience that are having challenges? I mean, I know that's probably a 3-hour webinar unto its own, but
Yeah, Joe, maybe you want to talk about some of the things that we've rolled out recently to hygiene to make their lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, there are a couple things. First, it's the leadership in the office. There are a lot of that I've seen in my past years. There's some difficult working situations in the office, whether it be a doctor who doesn't treat his staff very well, or it could be an office manager who's a little bit too authoritarian. So that's one of the things that we're very selective. Number one, when we bring in acquisitions, making sure we're picking the right doctors and the right offices there, but making it a nice work environment. No one wants to be yelled at in an office. I was actually just interviewing a controller. He talked about being yelled at and he didn't like it. And I'm like, no one does. So making it a nice workplace for them is one thing. We're also investing in some technology here as well. We started the process of GBT, guided biofilm therapy. I used it a lot in my past life, and it's another tool And I was pleasantly surprised yesterday when I met a hygienist who asked about it in one of our new acquisitions. I said, well, that's great, because we're starting it now and we're using it. It makes their job easier. It's easier on their hands. They love the technology. So we're making those investments, which do have a good ROI. So it's a benefit for the company as well, in order to kind of keep the hygienist here. But they are the toughest ones. Well, I shouldn't say that. They and dental assistants are tough to get and tough to keep. So we do whatever we can to try to keep them, including we have given some pay increases. It's just what probably a lot of us on this call have had to do to keep some stellar employees.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that product you were talking about? You mentioned?
Yep, guided biofilm therapy. It's a GBT. It's through company EMS, I believe. It's just it's a great it's a new advanced way of going through the hygiene process, with using cold water and different. I'm not a dentist, so I can't speak to everything, but I've had it done and it's so pleasant, and it's great, and the hygienists that I've had use it love it.
Great. Let's go one more poll question here, and then I just give us an idea of what technologies you're using in the office. You can answer as many of these as you like, so this is not one option, but let us know what you are using. Could be all these, could be none of these, but should pop up there in a second. You have the option of cloud-based practice management system, right? Cloud, on-premises server. So I guess you can't be using both. I mean, I guess technically you could if you've got different things going on in different locations, which we know happens. Revenue cycle management software, real-time analytics dashboard, AI-driven diagnostic tools. A couple more minutes here. No, maybe another minute.
These days, you need all of those, except for the on-prem solution.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I can see the percentage of people that have answered. And for the people that have answered this, because a lot of people don't answer and they must be sleeping. No, I'm just kidding. All right. See, when I do that, I get a couple more answers. So that's great. All right. So let's end the poll here. Last chance. Anybody else? Okay. Let us do this and we'll take a look and can look at the results here. So looks like not analytics.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just we were just talking about Jarvis so much, but that is pretty interesting. What's surprising is out of the people that responded, only a small percentage said cloud-based. More said on-premises server-based.
That's shocking.
Surprising.
Very surprising.
Okay, good to know. And AI-driven diagnostic tools, about a third, which, I spoke to somebody at one of the big diagnostic AI companies, and they said about 40% of DSOs are now using diagnostic tools. So this is pretty much right on with that percentage. I would have thought it would have been higher. They say with solo practitioners, it's only about 15% market penetration right now. So pretty interesting stuff. Okay, thank you everybody for taking that poll. That's great. We'll do one poll at the end and that'll be it, but the rest will be conversation. Here is a question that came in. We'll hold on to this because this is a great one about billing and revenue cycle management, but we're going to tackle that one about 2 questions from now. So this one, Joe, we'll start with you on this. This is a question that came in from the audience. Can you share an example of how data helped you identify an opportunity or helped you solve a problem across your DSO?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of mentioned that one a little bit earlier when we talked about hygiene and how we used that one. I'm trying to think on the fly here of other opportunities. Yes. So Jarvis also provides me this data on how many hours our office actually has, how many filled appointments that we have in the offices. And a lot of people probably have access to that as well. But that data has helped me identify my office efficiencies and how efficient we are in every office. If you've got 5 operatories in an office and you're closed on a Friday, you're already down to 80% efficiency for the week, right? Because you got the office 5 operatories closed down for 1 full day. So we're using that data now to help us drive patient flow into the office. It's helping us identify that, hey, we have this many hours that are open. We're going to need another provider in here, but we also need more patients in here as well. So we can use the data that we get from our analytics. We made a little in-house model that shows what our capacity is in every office. And just like my past life, when I was in manufacturing, you want that machine running all the time, and you don't want it to stop. You don't want it to, to run out of whatever. Keep it going, and that's kind of the focus that we have. And to be real honest with you, only a few of our offices are running at a very high efficiency rate. There's a lot that have all kinds of opportunity, which is it's going to involve us getting more patients in that office and getting more clinicians to see them. So it's how we use data now to drive the patient flow.
And even using that same set of data to see specialty capture opportunity. It's always good to see and Jarvis does a really great job of showing us a location, how much specialty care is actually happening in that office, because we're a robust multi-specialty platform. And when we see in offices, a high percentage of general dentistry, a low percentage of any particular specialty, that tells us there's an opportunity that's leaving our doors and allows us to make provider changes and provider additions so that we can not only capture that additional revenue from specialty care, but serve the patients and the general dentist better by availing them of specialty care.
What do you think the reason is for that? Like a practice that maybe is doing a lot of general dentistry, but isn't capturing specialty? Is it that they're not asking the right questions, or what's going on?
It's a good question. I'm sure we chat a little bit about some clinic level AI that could be helpful in this too. But some of it is basic old school habit of I diagnose a certain way, I only do this certain set of treatment, and I forget the fact that we have available to us an array of specialty care. Or it could be that we don't have enough specialty care capacity available to that office. So the reverse, supply and demand function. So it could be a whole host of things, but knowing that disparity exists allows us to then drill down. You can now have a conversation with a general dentist and say, what would you love to have nearby? Oh, I'd love to have an endodontist because I keep sending my patients 30 minutes away for their endodontic care. And look, we saw that because we're not doing enough endodontic care within the practice. So it's a lot of reasons that need to be kind of sussed out there.
We'll switch to financial experience for patients. Adam, what strategies, or do you have some type of, whether it's patient financing or some type of system that can help there?
Yeah. So first, just strategically, like zooming out a few clicks, because there's many avenues for technological improvement or technological hindrance that can exist. We look at this as the patient journey and the patient experience. And the second a patient thinks about calling us, all the way through to having completed treatment, there's a lot of steps in between where the financial aspect can go astray. And there's different technological solutions for patient onboarding, things like Weave, or using things like Solution Reach and Ascend for their online patient booking. Great. It makes it so that it streamlines the patient intake. Okay, well, now you got to worry about taking their insurance information and verifying their eligibility. And is that being done through your practice management software? Is that being done through a third-party tool? But most importantly is that you're considering that as part of the workflow and making sure you're doing that in a way that's as consumerized as possible, easy for the patient to input their data accurately, and as automated as possible so that less human beings on this side of the coin need to be involved. But all the way through when they're an active patient of the practice, is the software validating their insurance automatically on a regular basis? Is it sending them statements automatically through more advanced means, not just paper, but email and text message? Can people pay with their phones? Can they get that request for payment right to their phone while they're standing at the desk? Can they look at their account through an online portal? All of these steps are different technological solutions. So what we always look for is what solutions can provide the most so that we have as few as possible. And we think we've gotten that right between Dentrix Ascend, Square does a lot of our patient payments. And through even just those two technologies alone, and Weave, with the patient intake, we've been able to really make the experience predictable, streamlined, and very consumerized for the patient. And in that, we don't worry as much about, oh man, is this patient, are the 100 patients coming in tomorrow, do they have active benefits? Have we checked this, or have we solved this problem more than 24 hours in advance of their appointment? So it's a whole host of strategies that go in there.
Okay, you're right. It's a lot more than, there is a patient journey there, and it can become pretty complicated. And I think one of the things that you touched on, which you're using a lot of different platforms, which can be a challenge too. Especially for the people logging in and trying to get the platforms to talk to each other, and some play nicely together and others
Mhm.
don't. So I know that can be a real issue, that interoperability,
Mhm.
which seems to be something that occurs in other healthcare verticals, but not necessarily, it's not here in dentistry yet. So that can be challenging.
Well, the term tech stack was like didn't exist in dentistry 10 years ago, right? But we must be cognizant of our tech stack today and how they interoperate between each other, what they cost, how many sign-ons do you have? We're moving to a world of maybe a single sign-on, which would be great, where a team member could sit down, log in once, and use everything, right? It's just kind of alien to our industry, which, as I spoke about earlier, 15 years ago, I wish we had this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's good points. His question that just came in, which really referenced, I think it was more the technologies you are using poll question. And this question is, why is cloud-based better
Mhm.
if you are using a program like Dental Intel or Next Health that shows you everything you need? So I think that this question is related to the poll answers.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say, and Joe, please also chime in. I think that if your vision is to have a scaling group practice with many locations, it is much easier to scale a cloud-based software than it is an on-prem solution. Besides being easy, and I'll talk about why, it's also much more cost-effective than having individual servers in every location. You're backing them up. You're worrying about their security. It makes your IT apparatus more cumbersome and heavy by having on-prem solutions. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily inferior. In the early days, cloud solutions were inferior to on-prem solutions. I think the tide has kind of turned there. But cloud-based solutions allow us to turn it on tomorrow and it can function. But I think that the benefit of cloud solutions that I don't hear people talking about enough is they're easier to use. And when you're running a company, especially a ever-growing company, you want what your team to interact with to be as easy to use as possible. Listen, we were a Dentrix enterprise practice for decades. Dentrix Ascend is much more like using Facebook than it is like using Dentrix Ascend. And these days, people have more experience. I'm dating myself. Maybe not Facebook, maybe something else, right? But when you get a new employee, particularly in this challenging labor market, you want them to be able to sit down and feel that they could be successful using the most important technology that they're going to interact with for the day. And I think cloud solutions deliver on that promise better than on-prem.
Yeah, great answer. This one I can actually answer. Will I be able to get a recording of this webinar? Yes, you will. We'll actually send out an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. And also it's up on our website as well. So you can just go to groupdentistrynow.com and click on the webinar tab, and we'll have that up, and it's on our YouTube channel. So yep, it's in a bunch of different places. Great question. Okay, let's get back to the question that came in about 10 minutes ago regarding revenue cycle management. So the RCM topic, this is like one of the most popular, maybe beyond, like, we have buzzwords throughout the years in DSO land. Organic growth, right? Same store sales growth. We hear that a lot. I think the focus on RCM has been huge too. So we hear RCM, which 3 or 4 years ago, nobody really talked about. It existed, but we didn't talk about the importance of it. Let's talk a little bit about maybe the RCM process. And I don't know if you're using a blend of technology solutions along with human capital, but Adam, if you want to take that one.
Sure. So we today have a kind of a trifecta of a blend here. We have a significant amount of team members at our centralized support center that they are posting insurance payments and doing a lot of manual work there. They're also working with a host of technology, which I'll expand upon it. And sometimes we lean on outside vendors to help us, to flex capacity and when and where we need it. But going back to the patient journey aspect, RCM and the patient journey are kind of intrinsically paired. One of our operations people's favorite phrases is when garbage in, garbage out. If you don't take a patient into your system properly, the rest of it's going to start to break down. And that is centered around poor insurance plan builds, taking in inaccurate information, or just not managing that patient finances properly all the way across the spectrum. And it turns into AR on the other end, or denials on the other end. So you need to be smart about what your people do, what your outside people do, what your technology does. We use some technology. Obviously, the practice management software is fundamental number one because everything stems from there, the core ledger of the practice. So every other piece of technology has got to work with your PMS. Again, we use Dentrix Ascend. We use Inside Desk as a couple for a couple of reasons. One, helps manage our 20 plus people in our corporate infrastructure who support the RCM process, helps them delegate their responsibilities to each other. They can see what EOBs have come in, what needs to be posted, what denials have come in. Great. It makes it so your people can do more versus not having those people at all. This really empowers those people. But the data that comes out of these types of technologies around claims denial, how long it takes for a claim to be adjudicated. All of these things are very important pieces of information that allow us to change our behaviors. And sometimes that behavior is within the RCM function. Sometimes, Joe and I have a conversation. What's going on in the offices that might be producing this RCM issue? And it might be not collecting payment at the time of service. It might be incorrectly quoting co-payment, right? So the data that comes out of these softwares, which is mostly Inside Desk, also some Jarvis and some of the PMS, let us know what the heck's going on so that we can drill down a little bit deeper and solve them there. Technologies that are built into the PMS, like the auto verification of insurance plans, very, very important so that we always have the right fee schedule and insurance attached to a patient. So again, it doesn't turn into a denial later. So that's very essential because otherwise, in the not too distant past, we had human beings calling in, sitting on the phone with insurance companies for 30, 40 minutes to get breakdowns of insurance plans. Now, technology has made it much easier, and that very silly, unnecessary human interaction could turn into something that's more automated and really helps streamline the process. But again, Square, how we collect payments and send bills, that's a big part of it. Again, all these aspects require fine tuning. It's like a DJ board, and all these things need to go up and down just right to make sure that it's fluid. And the reason why I guessed RCM and the earlier poll is no one has fully solved RCM on a single practice level or on a scaled DSO level. It is the biggest pain point in healthcare. I purport it will be for a long time, but technology just helps us make it easier and easier. And someone commented things like Next Health, very similar technologies that help get the right data into the system, verify benefits, all these things, they exist today. So it's making our lives easier, but it's not perfect.
Yeah, that is actually a really great point about RCM and DU. And one of the question I was going to ask before you even brought that up, I mean, do you think there's a time where, and maybe I always try and save this till the end, the crystal ball, but I mean, do you think there's going to be a solution that really, addresses the entire cycle, right?
Yeah.
Everything.
It's always our belief, and I say I mean leadership of group practice, that the practice management software should do as much of that workflow as possible. And obviously where other technologies exist, it's only because of a deficiency within a practice management software. Because we expect all this stuff to be built in, right? It's core, it's essential. But what we've been seeing, and I've worked with Dentrix Ascend for many years, I've seen them incrementally absorb more and more aspects of all parts of the patient journey, but particularly RCM, so they can own more of the bag there and be easier for our team to interact with and provide more of those solutions.
A couple of interesting questions that came in. Again, they're not necessarily technology focused, but we talked about one of the KPIs, KPI Joe. I like that now. It's going to stick, Joe. You're in trouble. What is the value for a new patient? Do you have an actual value that I mean, that sounds awful, right? A dollar amount, but I mean, there's a value to a new patient, and how do you calculate that?
I can say without a whole lot of thought put into it, the number that I've always used, a value of a patient for the first year, $650. That's kind of how we would calculate that we think, and I actually took that from a previous job that I was in, but 650 is the number I use in my calculations whenever we're, looking at an ROI or something like that.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you probably know the cost of getting a new patient versus the cost of keeping a new patient, right? Which is another thing. The retention could be an issue. Recall getting patients back in the seat. So, all right, let's move on to this one's for you, Joe. As you grow, how do you ensure consistency in the patient experience? And also, I think consistency across all locations. So, from a workflow perspective for the teams, and it's where everybody wants to get to, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot easier if you are de novo, where you can start off that way, right? Nobody has necessarily not bad habits, but different habits. But you're
Yeah.
trying to get everybody to kind of be in sync and work the same way. You talk a little bit about that, Joe?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned de novo. I was going to say that there's two kinds of ways that I think of off the bat on growth, and as we're scaling up. One is we acquire an office. That's another one we're adding to the fold. And we want them to be consistent. And then when we expand offices, and we've done like 4 expansions this last year, adding up to 6 operatories in one office. So we're growing that way. How do you keep them consistent and maintain the same patient satisfaction? When you look at acquisitions, the first thing we need to do is we're selective. We're selective in our acquisitions. We turn away just as many as we go into business with, and we vet them out very well from the very beginning. We make sure that we meet their team before we even close on that acquisition. So we ask the owner doctors, make sure you're talking to your teams about what's going to happen over the next several weeks. We come in, we meet with them. I did 3 of them just yesterday, and let them know what we're all about and what and how it's going to look over the next couple of months as we acquire them. And then we've got boots on the ground, HR training groups, working with them. Not that we're changing a whole lot of things, but it takes a good month to get them on board with kind of our protocols and our procedures, our standards of care and things of that nature. The second side of it through expansions, and when we're going into an office, it really we scale and we get employee buy-in by asking their opinion. Hey guys, we've got this space we can take right next door, so we can add 6 operatories. What do you guys think? Do we have the patient flow? So you get the office manager involved, the doctor, the lead doctor, and other doctors, and everybody involved in that. So they help us. They help us put the return on investment together for that office, and they help us, tell us what the staffing should look like. And then it's a lot easier when you bring someone into an office that's already running and functioning well. But just by getting them involved on both of those expansion methodologies and get their input is how we haven't had a hiccup yet. It's been very successful in both sides, acquisitions and expansions.
Excellent.
Might I just say,
Yep.
being in dentistry for so long, integrating a new practice or a new team, technology used to always be a big hurdle where we were bringing in more than they had, and they were very fearful of it. And I think what Joe's saying, and what we see all the time now, we are actually being asked for more technology sooner through our integration process than ever before. They want our new software. I think there's a big rift between the kind of technology that we look at as DSOs, what we invest in versus what the small independent practices do. So there's like a built up lust for that type of introduction to technology. So it's great. It's a great win for us because one, we get to be the one who introduces them to it. But also we solve a problem. They love getting a new cloud-based software where they've been using the same software for 25 years. It's hard to use, things like that.
So this leads us to what tech investment do you think has made the biggest difference for you so far?
Out of the gate, the easiest one, plug and play, SprintRay, 3D printing. The problem with SprintRay and 3D printing is getting all of the doctors to use it. I'm sure there's some people on this call might agree with me. There's some that don't want anything to do with it, and we've got some that want to have 3 of them that they can play with. But where we were successful with SprintRay, and we don't have it in every one of our locations right now, but we had a couple doctors, techie doctors, that got it. We plugged it in. We're doing mouth guards automatically right out of the gate, and that's for something to get in and plug it and make it happen quickly. That's it. And on the other side, we tried AI. We tried Video Health AI, and not a lot of doctors embraced it. They didn't like it. But we just recently reintroduced it to all of our practices with some more training, They've made a lot of different upgrades to that as well. So we're going through AI again. And the beautiful part of it is the whole office can be involved with AI. From the morning huddle report, it gives you so much information. You know what's coming in at you, where your opportunities are. So we're excited about that one. That one's going to take hold a little better than it did the first time around.
I could just comment on those because I think those are really like powerful examples. And the clinic level AI and Joe's allusion to us, we're kind of re-rolling it out. This is like a testament to how innovation deprived our industry has been for so long. Something so new and so transformative hits and nobody knows how to leverage it, right? We wanted it. It made sense. It's logical. The pitch is logical. It's a, treatment plan explanation tool. It's a second opinion. It's an education tool for young doctors. It helps the RCM process. It's good for identifying clinical opportunity. But we had no clue how to integrate that into a practice, and no one did because it just never existed before. So we really believe in it, which is why it's sort of our providers. This is why we're bringing it back and giving it another go. But it's a testament to how some things could be so alien versus 3D printing through SprintRite. Again, we're big fans, but on-site manufacturing is nothing new in dentistry. Sarah broke that egg, 20 something years ago, but the reinvention of it being this fast, easy, cost-effective, AI-powered device now changes the game and worthy of reintroduction to the practice. I have spent some time in the lab world, and CAD/CAM dentistry, full milling, glazing, and producing chairside was just not something that I thought would be exciting at scale. 3D printing is a whole nother story, and I think we're just scratching the surface of it today.
Yeah, you talked about AI a couple of times there. So this is always we talked about RCM and organic growth, but I think AI is another buzzword that we hear, all the time in the dental industry. I mean, in our everyday lives, right? This is all we hear about. I think it's in everything now, whether we consider it AI or not. It seems to be everywhere and becoming more and more powerful. Some may say scary, some may say not, but it's here. It's not going anywhere, right? It's just going to continue to become part of, what we do, whether it's in the dental industry, I think, in our personal lives too. So beyond, we talked about diagnostic, we talked about video, and that certainly seems to be the first real AI that came out, in the dental industry that was talked about, diagnostic AI. There's a lot of what we call conversational AI too, whether it's like a Peer Logic or a Patient Prism, where they're doing like they're analyzing calls and then providing feedback, and there's some AI component there. And then there's the conversational AI where they're answering the call, right? So you actually have and in some cases you've got, I guess it wouldn't be considered conversational, but you've got the bots on the website too that are answering questions. So it's evolving, and there are just different types of conversational AI. So you've got diagnostic. We know kind of where you are there. You tried it, didn't work. You're going back at it again. What about conversational AI? What about, you talked about Inside Desk, which has AI, right, for RCM. So you're using some type of AI for RCM too. Any other types of AI that you're using in the practices?
First, is this when we tell the audience that the three of us have been AI the entire time?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, you have AI in a bunch of different buckets, and you're right, it's a big buzzword. And by the way, we're exhausted too, because we're constantly inundated by potential AI products, and you got to be really smart as to where you make investments, where you integrate. Let me first say that the conversation has really changed over the last 2-3 years. Whereas AI 2 years ago was either hokey, people didn't trust it. Now AI is almost like a sign of quality. If you don't have AI, they think something is inferior, which is really, really interesting and really good for the AI industry. But I think what you look at where AI could power processes, great, making a process robotic that used to be human. There's a lot of avenues for that. You talked about it, and Joe probably talked a little bit about how we integrate it and use it with some marketing functionality. But then you have even just the very basics, ChatGPT, Gemini, and how you integrate. We always talk about dental specific things. These agentic AI technologies enable business process ideation, document creation, all these great things. And we kind of democratize that across at least the administrative aspect of our business, to empower all of our managers and people to be able to do more by having a super smart robot with them at all times. And so it has non-clinic level benefit absolutely, for sure. But Joe, I know we use a little bit in our call monitoring, correct?
Yeah, it's very, we use Trackable is a system that we use to monitor our calls, and it's AI, just like it's doing with a lot of other systems that I've used in the past as well. But yeah, it's just monitoring the calls. It's giving us feedback on how well our people convert calls into appointments. But it's I think, to the point, a lot of our third party softwares that we use are also using AI in those. So it's not just the clinical video health or Overjet or anything like that. It's built into a lot of the software that we use on a day-to-day basis.
For the small growing practice, going back to the agentic use of AIs like ChatGPT and Gemini, it can professionalize you fast. And rather than, maybe you don't know how to put together a really nice presentation for your team, but ChatGPT does and can help you do that, right? Canva can do that. So I think there's a whole nother conversation to be had of how do you manage and lead with AI, because I think it can give smaller practices, the smaller businesses, the weight and feel of much more sophisticated businesses if used well. Now, doesn't mean you're answering all your emails with AI and that kind of stuff, but helping you do the stuff in the backs, analyses, presentations, things like that, really helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, as a small business, I would agree wholeheartedly that there are things that it does to, and if you use it correctly, you're probably ahead of the game, because I think a lot of people aren't either using it or they're not using it correctly, to your point about answering emails with it. And not to say that you can't do that in some cases, but other times it's just, you want to keep some genuineness, you want that, whether it's touching the patient or touching the employees. And if you're using AI to do that, it's probably not, the best thing to do. It makes things more efficient, creates better presentations, things like that. We've used it and just find it's fascinating how it's changing. Okay, back to we've got about 8 minutes left. So, and it's awful that I didn't do this sooner, but thank you, Henry Scheinwan, for sponsoring this webinar. We've talked a lot about Jarvis, and we've talked about Ascend, Dentrix Ascend, just a couple of things that Henry Scheinwan has. And what I'm going to do now, and then we'll get into these last couple of questions here. I just want this last poll question to be up here. If you are interested in learning about Dentrix Ascend or any of the Henry Scheinwan products, just give us a yes or a no. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Nobody's going to bother you, but just want to make sure that we can reach out to the people that are interested. And then I will end this poll in a couple of seconds. And I want to ask a question about HR and recruiting, and if there are any strategies that you've used really from a technology perspective to help with your recruiting, retention, or HR management.
Kind of two buckets there. On the maybe the boring side, obviously having a robust HR system that can manage content, candidate management. Especially at a larger organization, you may have a lot of open positions. We use Paylocity, and all of our job postings go through there, so we can very easily manage our candidates. And that's the boring stuff. I think the cool stuff is things that improve the value to the people who work in our organization, the providers and everyone. And some of those things are just value adds and supportive mechanisms. Like we launched an internal learning management system in the business, and we think that's a really important promise, that we support our people, we support our clinicians, we provide them CE credits, and through high quality online coursework. We put our own operations paradigms and how-tos into this LMS so that they could have access to training whenever they need in a self-service way. That's more of like what people have come to expect these days. And we use DentLogix as our partner for that. But as long as you offer something like that, it's really important to make that kind of technological investment for the team. And it does attach people to the organization, which increases retention.
Excellent. Yeah, we know the folks at DentLogic, they actually power our the Group Dentistry Now Learning Hub. So
Mm.
yeah, I think having a customized LMS for your group with a combination of operational information for the staff and procedures, compliance, and then the continuing ed side of things is really it's what I think it's kind of back to what you were saying, Adam, about the expectation now that you will have technology when you go to
Hmm.
work for a DSO. It will be the same thing where they're looking for joining a DSO that would have their own custom LMS system that they can learn on, whether it's at their own pace or get continuing ed credits. I think that's really crucial. I'm just going to put up this last slide here. Again, if anybody wants to scan this and request more information, that's great. We didn't disappear yet. We've got 4 more minutes. So I guess a couple last questions that I would have. Actually, these I didn't necessarily have them. It came in from the audience, but maybe we can kind of wrap everything up with a question about if somebody's really just delving into technology solutions. Joe and Adam, like where do you start? Like you talked a little bit about maybe a list of what's kind of been the most impactful, like 1 to 3 or 4. What would be like the order of you should start with this and then move to this? What are the technologies they should really be implementing at a group practice?
Yeah, I can kick it off. I think the first and foremost, the thing you need to know where you are. You need to know how you're doing in a certain category. Someone could go say, "Hey, let's get AI in for everything." Well, maybe their case acceptance today is 98%. I think you've got to be able to measure where you're at. So I think the first technical direction I would go in is getting your data analyzed, whatever tool it might be, whether it's Tableau or it's in our case Jarvis, that you can see how you're doing in these categories. And then you can say, okay, we're going to attack this, and this is where we're going to add technology to that. That's where I would start. But Adam, I don't know if you've got some other suggestions there as well.
I think that's great. It's very important. I think maybe additionally is really focusing on the base, and the base is your practice management system, because everything else in your tech stack is going to be built atop that. So making that right choice for your business. And we talked about some of the reasons why you might want a cloud-based, or whether it's Ascend or something else. It's a really, really important choice. And then between those two bookends that we just described, you pick out the biggest opportunity, the big opportunities and the big pain points, and you address those. And I think we know what those will be. Those will be things in the RCM, the patient journey, life cycle, and you start tackling those and making sure that you're getting the most from your existing technologies before you go out and you buy something else. And when you go out and you buy something else, you got to make sure it works well with the other technologies.
Bill, just real quick story on that. When I was in my past life, we were looking at call answer rate. No one ever looked at the number. We found it was like 60-something% call answer rate in the offices. We found some offices that had the do not disturb button turned on. So kind of the opposite that you want in an office, right? But until we started measuring it, we had no clue we were at 68% call answer rate in the office. So that's where we dove in and made some big changes there to get that rate up to 85%. I think is what it ended up at.
Did you break that button after that, Joe?
Every single one of them. Yes.
Thank you, Adam and Joe of Archway Dental. Thanks for being on the webinar. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Hey, Adam, if people want to find out more about Archway, what's the website?
Archway.dental.
Archway.dental, and I will also make sure we put a little note in on where we host the webinar, the recording of it, to read the emerging groups to watch write up. It was just really great story about Dental Associates of Connecticut, and how you've grown so much, and we appreciate the partnership you've had with Group Dentistry Now for past couple of years, Adam and Joe. It's been a great relationship, and appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be on this webinar sponsored by Henry Schein One. It's been a great conversation.
We appreciate it as well. Thank you so much, Bill.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching us today.